Admiral Kate Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance and watched the screens that showed empty space where a planet used to be. The test had worked perfectly, and she felt both pride and fear at what humanity had created. 100. Years ago, the galaxy had told humans to stay in their corner and be quiet, and that was exactly what they had done. The aliens thought humans were too weak and stupid to matter. But they were wrong about everything. Dr. Alan Burke walked up to her with his tablet showing the energy readings from the test. His face was tired but happy because they had spent decades working on this moment. The Genesis drive performed exactly as we calculated, he said while looking at the numbers. Complete molecular disassembly in 4.7 seconds and 98.3% energy conversion efficiency. Kate nodded and remembered when the Galactic Federation had first made contact with Earth. The aliens had seemed so advanced with their shiny ships and fancy technology. They had looked at humans like parents looking at children who were playing with toys. The Federation had given Earth a few basic technologies and then told them to develop 12 nearby worlds and stay quiet. The message was clear. Humans were not important enough to worry about, but the aliens had made a big mistake. They thought that silence meant weakness, but humans had used that silence to work. While the Federation fought wars and made treaties and argued about trade routes, humanity had been building something incredible. Every human colony had secret facilities deep underground. Every mining operation was really collecting materials for weapons. Every research station was working on technologies that would make the aliens very afraid. Captain Roy Henderson was piloting the test ship that had just destroyed the planet. His voice came through the communication system with excitement and disbelief. "Control, this is unbelievable. The planet just came apart like it was made of sand. The Genesis drive is beyond anything we imagined possible." The Genesis drive was their greatest achievement, but it was not their only secret. Kate thought about the shadow fleet that was hidden in the dark spaces between stars. Those ships could move through dimensions that normal sensors could not detect. They could appear anywhere in the galaxy without warning and disappear just as quickly. The Federation had no idea that human ships had been watching their worlds for decades. Dr. Burke showed Kate another screen that displayed the Neural Command Network. This technology let human commanders control hundreds of ships with their minds. The connection was so fast that entire fleets could change formation in seconds. No alien military had anything like it because they had never learned to trust their technology completely. Humans had no such fears. "How many ships do we have ready for deployment?" Kate asked while looking at the tactical displays. "The Shadow Fleet has 847 vessels fully operational, and another 200 will be ready within 6 months," Burke replied. "Each ship carries Genesis weapons and can operate independently for 2 years. We also have the mobile construction facilities that can build more ships wherever we need them." Kate walked to the main viewing screen and looked out at the space where the test planet had been. Tiny pieces of matter were still glowing as they cooled down from the molecular breakdown. The Genesis drive had not just destroyed the planet, but had converted most of its mass into pure energy that could be collected and used. It was destruction and creation at the same time. The communication officer turned to Kate with a message from Earth Command. "Admiral, we are receiving confirmation that all colony worlds have completed their preparations. The hidden shipyards are ready to begin full production and the defense networks are online." Kate felt the weight of what they had accomplished. Humanity had built an entire secret civilization while the galaxy thought they were struggling to survive on a few poor worlds. The truth was that humans had been preparing for this moment since the day the Federation had dismissed them as unimportant. Burke brought up a star map that showed the real extent of human territory. Red dots marked the official colonies that the Federation knew about, but blue dots showed the secret bases and hidden facilities. There were thousands of blue dots scattered across half the galaxy. Humanity had been expanding quietly for a century while everyone else was looking the other way. The automated mining operations are extracting resources from over 3,000 systems, Burke explained. The mobile habitats house 200 million people who officially do not exist. Our industrial capacity now exceeds the entire Federation by a factor of 12. Kate smiled at the irony. The Federation had given humans the basic technologies they needed to travel between stars, thinking it would keep them busy for centuries. Instead, humans had improved those technologies far beyond what their creators thought possible. The hyperdrive systems that took Federation ships weeks to cross the galaxy could be crossed by human vessels in days. Captain Henderson's ship returned from the test site and docked with the Defiance. When he came to the bridge, his eyes were still wide with amazement. "Admiral, I have been flying ships for 20 years, but I have never seen anything like what just happened. That planet had 3 times the mass of Earth, and the Genesis drive turned it into energy in less than 5 seconds. Kate looked at Henderson and saw the future of human military power. Young officers like him had been trained on technologies that the galaxy could not imagine. They thought in ways that alien military commanders would never understand. When the time came to reveal themselves, humanity would not just have better weapons but better warriors. The test had been successful, but it was only the beginning. Kate knew that somewhere in the galaxy there were threats that would eventually force humans to reveal their secrets. When that day came, the species that had dismissed humanity as weak and primitive would learn the truth. While the galaxy had been sleeping, humans had been forging weapons that could kill planets and building fleets that could conquer stars. But Kate also knew that weapons alone would not be enough. Humanity had learned from watching the Federation make mistakes. They had studied how empires rose and fell. When humans finally stepped out of the shadows, they would not just conquer, but would build something better than what came before. The galaxy would sleep no more. Supreme Chancellor Vex of the Trilaxian Republic stared at the reports coming from the Outer Rim worlds and felt fear like he had never experienced before. The Void Seekers had appeared without warning 6 months ago and were destroying everything in their path. These were not ordinary invaders who wanted territory or resources. They were something far worse, living machines that consumed entire planets and converted the matter into more of themselves. The emergency session of the Galactic Federation Council was filled with panic. Representatives from hundreds of species argued and shouted while their worlds burned. Admiral Keth of the Zephyrian Empire slammed his fist on the table as he spoke. "Our most powerful weapons barely scratch their hulls. They adapt to every strategy we use. At this rate, they will reach the core worlds within a year." Vex looked at the tactical displays that showed the advancing Void Seeker fleets. Red markers indicated destroyed worlds, while yellow ones marked planets under attack. The pattern was clear and terrifying. Nothing could stop them. The Federation's greatest warships were being destroyed as easily as training targets. General Lisa Parker walked into the council chamber without invitation or announcement. Her human military uniform looked simple compared to the elaborate dress of the alien officials, but there was something in her calm confidence that made everyone stop talking. Behind her came 2 other humans carrying data tablets and portable holographic projectors. "Supreme Chancellor," Parker said with a slight bow, "the United Earth Systems offers assistance in dealing with your current crisis." The chamber erupted in surprised voices. Most of the council members had forgotten that humans even existed. The Federation records showed that Earth had gone silent decades ago and was presumed to be a failed colony that had collapsed back into primitive conditions. Ambassador Thek of the Centauri Union laughed with disbelief. "Humans? We thought your species was extinct. What could you possibly offer against an enemy that our combined fleets cannot defeat?" Parker remained calm and gestured to one of her companions. "This is Commander Ben Taylor, our intelligence specialist. He has been observing the Void Seeker advance and has prepared a detailed analysis of their capabilities and weaknesses." Taylor activated his holographic projector, and the air above the council table filled with 3-dimensional images of Void Seeker ships. But these were not the blurry long-range scans that Federation forces had managed to capture. These were perfect detail recordings taken from close range, showing every surface and weapon system on the enemy vessels. "How did you obtain these recordings?" Vex asked while studying the impossibly clear images. Our ships have been shadowing the Void Seeker fleet since they first appeared, Taylor replied. They cannot detect us and do not know we exist? We have mapped their entire command structure and identified 17 critical vulnerabilities in their technology. The chamber fell silent. The implications were staggering. If humans had ships that could approach Void Seeker forces undetected, it meant they possessed technology far beyond anything the Federation had imagined possible. Dr. Claire Watson stepped forward and activated another projector. This one showed detailed technical specifications of Void Seeker weapons and defensive systems. The enemy uses a form of adaptive armor that learns from each attack. However, this adaptation requires 0.3 seconds to complete. Weapons that can destroy targets faster than this window cannot be adapted to. Admiral Keth leaned forward to study the data. Impossible. No known weapon can achieve complete target destruction in less than 1 second, let alone 0.3 seconds. Watson smiled slightly. No known Federation weapon. However, humanity has developed several technologies that exceed these requirements. We can destroy Void Seeker ships instantly, and their adaptation systems will be useless. The council members looked at each other with confusion and hope. Representative Mora of the Altarian Collective spoke carefully. What do you want in return for this assistance? Humans have been isolated for nearly a century. Why help us now? Parker walked to the center of the chamber and looked around at all the assembled aliens. The Federation gave humanity 12 worlds and told us to develop them quietly. We have done exactly what you asked. Those 12 worlds are now the foundation of a much larger human territory, and we claim sovereignty over all space within 200 light-years of Earth. The chamber exploded in angry voices. The space Parker was claiming included over 50 Federation worlds and thousands of resource-rich systems. It was one of the most valuable regions in the galaxy. Ridiculous, shouted Admiral Keth. Humans could never defend such a vast territory. You have no fleet large enough to patrol even a fraction of that space. Taylor activated another hologram that showed the true extent of human military deployment. Thousands of ship markers appeared throughout the disputed region, each one representing a human vessel that had been operating in secret for decades. The alien officials stared in shock at the scope of humanity's hidden presence. Every world you claim as Federation territory in this region has been under human protection for over 50 years, Taylor explained. Our ships have been stopping pirates, preventing alien invasions, and maintaining order. The Federation governors never knew because we worked invisibly. Vex studied the display and realized the truth. Many border incidents that Federation forces had been unable to prevent had somehow resolved themselves mysteriously. Trade routes that should have been dangerous remained safe without explanation. The humans had been protecting Federation interests without anyone knowing. Watson showed another set of technical data. The Void Seekers are not just invaders. They are scouts for something much larger. Our long-range sensors have detected massive construction activity in the void between galaxies. If they succeed in consuming this galaxy, they will use the resources to build an invasion force that can attack other galaxies. Other galaxies? Vex asked with growing horror. The Void Seekers have consumed at least 12 galaxies before reaching ours, Watson continued. Each galaxy they destroy makes them stronger and smarter. This is not a war for territory. This is a war for the survival of all life in the universe. Parker stepped forward again. Humanity offers an alliance. We will share our planet-killing technologies and help defeat the Void Seekers completely. In return, the Federation will formally recognize human sovereignty over our claimed territory and establish new treaties based on equal partnership rather than colonial administration. The chamber was quiet except for the sound of breathing and the hum of holographic projectors. The alien officials realized they had no choice. Their greatest weapons were useless against the Void Seekers, but humans claimed to have weapons that could destroy entire planets. The species they had dismissed as primitive children were now offering to save the galaxy. How can we be certain? Your weapons will work? Vex asked. Taylor smiled and activated one final hologram. This one showed a recording of a human ship approaching a small asteroid. The ship fired a single beam, and the asteroid simply vanished, converted instantly into expanding energy. This is a minor demonstration using our smallest weapon system. Our main battle fleets carry devices that can destroy planets in seconds. The Council voted within an hour. The Federation formally recognized the human-controlled territory and authorized immediate joint military operations against the Void. Seekers. As the aliens filed out of the chamber, none of them noticed that Parker was smiling. Humanity had waited a century for this moment, and everything was proceeding exactly according to plan. Captain Jake Morgan guided the Federation transport through the asteroid field on the dark side of Earth's moon and watched the alien delegates gasp in amazement at what they saw. Hidden among the rocks were construction facilities that stretched for hundreds of kilometers in every direction. Massive ships hung in the void like sleeping giants, each one larger than the biggest Federation dreadnought. "Welcome to Luna Base," Morgan said as their ship approached a docking bay that could hold 20 Federation cruisers. "This is one of 17 major shipyards that humanity operates in this system alone." Ambassador Thek pressed his face against the viewport and stared at the ships being built around them. "These vessels are enormous. How long have you been constructing them?" "This particular yard has been operational for 73 years, Morgan replied. "We began construction 6 months after the Federation established our territorial limits. You told us to develop 12 worlds quietly, so we decided to develop the space around those worlds as well." The transport docked and Morgan led the aliens through corridors carved directly into the lunar rock. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows on the walls, but the delegates could see that this was no hastily built facility. Every surface was polished and every system was perfectly maintained. This was a permanent installation that had been designed to last for centuries. Engineer Patricia Lewis met them at the main observation deck and gestured toward the nearest ship under construction. "That is the UES Retribution, our newest planet killer class vessel. She is 4.2 kilometers long and carries enough Genesis weapons to sterilize an entire star system." The alien delegates stared at the massive ship. Its hull was black and seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Weapons pods dotted its surface like mechanical tumors, and the main Genesis array at the front looked like the mouth of some ancient sea creature. "How many ships like this do you have?" asked Representative Mora, her voice barely above a whisper. "The Retribution class numbers 347 vessels, with 89 more under construction," Lewis replied casually. "But they are not our largest ships. Would you like to see the orbital defense platforms?" Morgan led the group to another viewing area where they could see the massive installations that surrounded Earth. Each platform was the size of a small moon and bristled with weapons that could destroy entire fleets. The aliens had assumed that Earth was defenseless because their sensors detected no ships in orbit, but now they realized that Earth was protected by weapons they could not even see. "Your sensors cannot detect our defensive systems because they operate partially outside normal spacetime," Lewis explained. "We call it shadow technology. Our ships and weapons exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, which makes them invisible to conventional detection methods." Admiral Kef studied the defensive platforms with the eye of a military professional. "These installations could destroy any fleet in the galaxy. Why did you keep them hidden for so long?" "Because we were not ready," Morgan answered. "Weapons are only tools. We needed time to build the wisdom to use them properly. The Federation has been fighting wars for thousands of years and has never achieved lasting peace. Humanity decided to learn from your mistakes before revealing our capabilities." Lewis activated a holographic display that showed the true extent of human territory. The map revealed not just the official 12 worlds, but thousands of hidden facilities scattered throughout space. Automated factories orbited dead stars, converting their energy into raw materials. Mobile habitats drifted in the void between systems, housing millions of humans who officially did not exist. "We have built an entire civilization in the empty spaces that other species ignore," Lewis said. Dark matter collectors, quantum foundries, dimensional shipyards. Our industrial capacity now exceeds the entire Federation, but we have kept it completely hidden. The aliens followed Morgan through a transport tube that connected to another section of Luna Base. Here they saw the Genesis weapons being manufactured. Massive machines assembled components that seemed to bend space around themselves. Each weapon was the size of a building but could reduce planets to their component atoms in seconds. Dr. Helen Garcia joined the tour and explained the science behind the Genesis technology. We learned to manipulate matter at the quantum level by studying failed Federation experiments. Your scientists gave up when they encountered the stability problems, but humans are more persistent. We spent 50 years solving equations that your people considered impossible. The Void Seekers will not expect weapons like these, Garcia continued. Their adaptive armor is designed to handle energy weapons and kinetic projectiles. Genesis beams operate by disrupting the fundamental forces that hold matter together. There is nothing to adapt to because the attack happens faster than their systems can analyze it. Morgan brought the delegation to the command center where Admiral Ryan Clark was coordinating the deployment of the human fleet. Hundreds of displays showed ship movements throughout the galaxy, but what amazed the aliens was the speed at which information flowed. Orders were transmitted and acknowledged instantly across distances that should require hours for communication. Quantum entanglement networks, Clark explained when he saw their confusion. Every human ship is connected to every other ship through paired particles. We can coordinate fleet movements in real time regardless of distance. Your commanders are still using radio signals that take years to cross the galaxy. The tour continued to the Shadow Drive testing facility where Captain Ninia Brooks was preparing for a demonstration. Her ship, a small destroyer, was floating in a containment field surrounded by every type of sensor the Federation had ever developed. The sensors showed the ship clearly visible from all angles. "Watch carefully," Brooks said from the ships. "Bridge Shadow Drive activation in 3, 2, 1. The ship vanished. Not just from visual sight, but from every sensor simultaneously. The aliens checked their instruments frantically but found no trace of the vessel. Then Brooks spoke again from somewhere that seemed to be right beside them. "I am currently positioned inside the asteroid field 50,000 kilometers from your location," her voice said. "Shadow Drive allows us to exist in parallel dimensions where the normal laws of physics operate differently. We can move faster than light, ignore solid barriers, and remain undetectable to any known technology." The ship reappeared exactly where it had started, as if it had never moved. The demonstration had taken less than 30 seconds, but the implications were staggering. Human ships could appear anywhere in the galaxy without warning and disappear just as quickly. Clark showed the aliens one final display, the complete battle plan for defeating the Void Seekers. The strategy was unlike anything the Federation had ever attempted. Instead of massive fleet actions, humans would use small groups of shadow ships to appear inside enemy formations, unleash Genesis weapons at point-blank range, and vanish before return fire could be targeted. The Void Seekers are accustomed to fighting enemies that attack from predictable directions using conventional weapons. Clark explained, "They have never faced an enemy that can strike from multiple dimensions simultaneously while using weapons that destroy matter faster than their systems can adapt." Ambassador Thek looked around at the impossible technologies surrounding them and asked the question that had been troubling him since the tour began. "Why are you showing us all of this? These secrets give you incredible advantages. Why share them with the Federation?" Morgan smiled and gestured toward Earth, which was visible through the observation deck windows. "Because humans learned something during our century of silence. We learned that true strength comes not from hiding in the shadows, but from building something worthy of the light. We are ready to step out of hiding and help build a galaxy where all species can thrive." The alien delegates realized they were witnessing more than advanced technology. They were seeing the emergence of a new galactic power that had spent a century preparing not just for war, but for the peace that would follow. The main Void Seeker fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Centauri system and began their standard approach toward the inhabited worlds. These living machines had consumed 12 galaxies before reaching this one, and they expected the same easy victory they had achieved everywhere else. Their massive biomechanical ships moved in perfect formation, confident that nothing in this galaxy could challenge their supremacy. Admiral Sam Mitchell watched the enemy fleet from the bridge of his flagship, the UES Vengeance, but the Void Seekers could not see him. His ship existed in shadow space, invisible to all conventional sensors and untouchable by normal weapons. Around him, the human shadow fleet waited in perfect silence for the moment to strike. Enemy fleet is maintaining predictable formation, reported Captain Luke Miller from his ship's Neural Command Center. All vessels are following standard consumption protocols. They have no idea we are here. Mitchell smiled grimly as he studied the tactical displays. The Void Seekers had grown arrogant after centuries of easy victories. They moved like predators who had never encountered anything that could fight back. That overconfidence would be their downfall. Colonel Foster, you are authorized to begin the demonstration, Mitchell said into his communication system. Colonel Amy Foster acknowledged from her squadron of shadow fighters. These small ships were invisible ghosts that could appear anywhere in the enemy formation without warning. Foster had spent 20 years training for this moment, learning to fight in ways that no enemy could predict or counter. Shadow Squadron. This is Foster. Execute attack pattern Omega. Show these machines what happens when they threaten human worlds. Foster's fighters phased into normal space directly inside the Void Seeker formation. The enemy ships suddenly found human vessels, appearing between their hulls so close that collision seemed inevitable. But before the Void Seekers could react, the human ships opened fire with Genesis weapons. The effect was devastating. Void Seeker ships that had withstood the combined firepower of entire Federation fleets simply vanished as their molecular structure was torn apart at the quantum level. The Genesis beams did not just destroy the ships but converted their mass directly into energy that human vessels could absorb and use. The surviving Void Seekers tried to adapt to this new threat, but their systems could not analyze weapons that operated faster than their sensors could record. By the time their adaptive armor began to respond, the human ships had already phased back into shadow space and vanished from detection. First strike successful, Foster reported. 17 enemy vessels destroyed with no human casualties. Enemy adaptation systems showed zero effectiveness against Genesis weapons. Mitchell nodded and opened communications to the entire Shadow Fleet. All units, this is Admiral Mitchell. Execute the primary battle plan. Show the Void Seekers that their reign of terror ends today. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships appeared from impossible angles, striking from above, below, and through the middle of enemy formations. The Void Seekers found themselves fighting an enemy that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, making their carefully planned tactics useless. Captain Miller demonstrated the power of the Neural Command network by coordinating hundreds of ships with the speed of thought. His consciousness was linked directly to the fleet's tactical systems, allowing him to process information and issue orders faster than any biological brain should be able to manage. Enemy movements that would normally require minutes to analyze and counter were responded to in seconds. Enemy fleet is attempting to withdraw to hyperspace, Miller reported. Intercept courses calculated and transmitted to all units. They will not escape. Dr. Helen Garcia watched the battle from the command ship's science station and marveled at how perfectly their weapons performed. The Genesis technology that humanity had spent decades developing was proving even more effective than their calculations had predicted. Each shot was converting entire Void Seeker vessels into pure energy with 99.7% efficiency. Admiral, the enemy flagship is attempting to transmit a distress signal back to their staging areas, Garcia reported. Should we jam their communications? Negative, Mitchell replied. Let them call for help. When their reinforcements arrive, we want them to know exactly what they are facing. The battle continued for 6 hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. Human ships moved through the Void Seeker fleet like ghosts, appearing long enough to unleash devastating attacks before vanishing again. The enemy's adaptive technology was useless against weapons that destroyed targets faster than adaptation could occur. Foster led a final assault against the enemy command ship, a massive biomechanical construct that served as the brain for the entire fleet. Her fighters phased into the ship's interior and began systematically destroying critical systems with precision Genesis strikes. "This is for every world you have consumed," Foster said as she targeted the ship's central processing core. "This is for every species you have extinct. This is for every galaxy you have murdered." The command ship died in a cascade of molecular disintegration that spread throughout its structure like a virus. Without central coordination, the remaining Void Seeker vessels began to malfunction and attack each other. The fleet that had seemed invincible 6 hours earlier was now nothing but expanding clouds of converted energy, but Mitchell knew the battle was only beginning. His sensors detected massive hyperspace signatures approaching from the direction of dark space. The Void Seeker reinforcements were arriving, and they would be far larger than the scouting force that had just been destroyed. "All ships, prepare for Phase 2, Mitchell ordered. "Garcia, activate the Cascade Genesis. It is time to show these machines that humanity does not just defend our territory, we eliminate threats permanently." Garcia's fingers moved across her control panel, activating humanity's most devastating weapon. The Cascade Genesis was not just a planet killer, but a system killer that could chain react across multiple star systems. More importantly, it could follow hyperspace wake signatures back to their point of origin. "Cascade Genesis is armed and ready," Garcia reported. "Target lock acquired on incoming hyperspace signatures. Estimated enemy force is 50,000 vessels approaching in battle formation." "Fire," Mitchell ordered. The Cascade Genesis beam lanced out from the Vengeance and struck the lead Void Seeker ship as it emerged from hyperspace. But instead of simply destroying that vessel, the beam followed the quantum wake back through hyperspace itself. The energy cascade spread through the dimensional tunnel like lightning, destroying every ship in the enemy fleet before they could fully enter normal space. More than that, the cascade continued following the hyperspace trail back to its source. Across thousands of light years, Void Seeker staging areas and construction facilities were consumed by the spreading wave of destruction. The beam traveled all the way back to the edge of the galaxy where the main Void Seeker base was located. "Cascade successful," Garcia reported with amazement in her voice. "Total enemy casualties estimated at 847,000 vessels and 23 major installations. The hyperspace wake has been completely sterilized back to its point of origin." Mitchell looked at the tactical display and saw that the Void Seeker threat had been eliminated not just locally but galactically. The Cascade had followed their supply lines and communication networks, destroying their entire presence in this galaxy in a single devastating strike. "All ships return to shadow space," Mitchell ordered. "Mission accomplished. The galaxy is safe, and the Void Seekers will never threaten anyone again." As the human fleet vanished back into the dimensional shadows, the Federation worlds received confirmation that the impossible had happened. The enemy that had seemed unstoppable had been completely destroyed by weapons and tactics they could barely comprehend. Humanity had not just won a battle, but had eliminated an existential threat to all life in the galaxy. The age of human dominance had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. President Karen Hughes stood before the assembled representatives of 400 species in the newly constructed New Geneva Station and looked out at faces that showed mixtures of gratitude, fear, and uncertainty. The massive space station orbited peacefully in neutral space, its gleaming corridors filled with beings who had never imagined they would be governed by the species they had once dismissed as primitive children. "The Void Seeker threat has been eliminated permanently," Hughes announced to the gathered delegates. "Our Cascade weapons have traced their supply lines back to their origins and destroyed every installation they built in this galaxy. There will be no return, no revenge, no second invasion. They are gone forever. Ambassador Tony Reed sat at the human delegation table and watched the alien representatives process this information. 6 months ago, these same beings had been begging for human assistance against an enemy they could not defeat. Now they were learning that humanity possessed weapons capable of eliminating threats across entire galaxies in a single coordinated strike. Supreme. Chancellor Vex of the former Trilexian Republic raised his hand to speak. President Hughes, we are grateful for humanity's intervention, but we must address the implications of what has occurred. Your species now possesses military capabilities that exceed all other forces in the galaxy combined. What assurances can you give that these weapons will not be used against peaceful worlds? Hughes smiled and gestured to the viewing ports that showed the peaceful traffic moving through the station's docking bays. Ships from hundreds of species were conducting trade and diplomatic business under human protection. Chancellor Vex, actions speak louder than promises. Human forces have been protecting Federation worlds for over 50 years without your knowledge. We could have conquered the galaxy at any time during the past century, but instead we chose to build something better. Dr. Helen Garcia stepped forward and activated a holographic display that showed the new governmental structure of what was now called the Human Galactic Commonwealth. The Commonwealth operates on principles of individual rights and democratic representation. Every species maintains autonomy over their internal affairs while contributing to collective defense and shared prosperity. The alien delegates studied the governmental framework with fascination and some suspicion. Representative Mora of the Altarian Collective asked the question many were thinking. What happens to species that do not wish to join this commonwealth? Will they be forced to submit to human rule? Absolutely not, Hughes replied firmly. The commonwealth is voluntary. Any species that prefers independence may maintain it, provided they do not threaten commonwealth members or engage in activities like slavery, genocide, or territorial expansion through conquest. We will defend our friends, but we will not force anyone to become our friends. Admiral Ryan Clark joined the presentation and showed tactical displays of the new defensive arrangements. Commonwealth military doctrine is based on protection rather than conquest. Our shadow fleets patrol known space to prevent conflicts before they begin. Pirates, slavers, and aggressive empires find that their operations are disrupted by forces they cannot see or fight. The most remarkable aspect of the new order was how smoothly it had been implemented. Human administrators had been quietly studying Federation governmental systems for decades, identifying problems and developing solutions. When they finally revealed themselves, they were ready with detailed plans for everything from trade regulations to diplomatic protocols. Ambassador Reed stood to address specific concerns about human expansion. The territory that humanity now governs was always ours by right of protection. We claim only the space around worlds that human forces have been defending for decades. No species has been displaced and no existing governments have been overthrown without the consent of their people. This was technically true, though several particularly corrupt Federation governors had found themselves facing popular uprisings that seemed to occur just as human advisors arrived to help establish new democratic institutions. The transitions had been remarkably smooth and bloodless, almost as if they had been planned years in advance. Captain Nina Brooks brought the delegates to the station's central command center, where they could see the scope of human monitoring capabilities. Displays showed peaceful space traffic throughout the galaxy, but also highlighted the rapid response capabilities that made aggressive actions impossible. Any ship that begins charging weapons in Commonwealth space is immediately surrounded by Shadow Fleet vessels, Brooks explained. Conflicts are prevented before they can begin because potential aggressors know they cannot win and cannot escape. This creates a stable environment where trade and diplomacy can flourish. The aliens were amazed by the efficiency of human governance, but some were troubled by its implications. Admiral Keth of the former Zephyrin Empire voiced their concerns. Humanity has created a system where resistance is impossible and escape is unlikely. How is this different from conquest through superior force? Hughes walked to the center of the chamber and looked around at all the assembled delegates. The difference is in our goals and methods. Conquerors take what they want and impose their will through fear. We offer what people need and earn their cooperation through demonstrated benefit. Every Commonwealth world is more prosperous and secure than it was under Federation rule. This was undeniably true. Human technological advances in agriculture, medicine, and energy production had been shared freely with Commonwealth members. Worlds that had struggled with poverty and conflict for centuries were now experiencing unprecedented growth and stability. Dr. Garcia provided statistical evidence of the Commonwealth's success. Average lifespan has increased by 34% across all member species. Interstellar trade has grown by 400% due to improved security and transportation. Violent conflicts have decreased to less than 2% of pre-Commonwealth levels. But perhaps the most impressive achievement was how humanity had avoided the mistakes that had destroyed previous galactic governments. Instead of imposing uniform laws across all species, the Commonwealth recognized cultural differences and allowed local variation within broad frameworks of rights and responsibilities. Reed addressed the final concern that many delegates harbored. Some of you worry that humans will become corrupt as we gain power, that we will repeat the mistakes of previous galactic empires. We understand this concern because we have spent a century studying how and why those empires failed. The holographic display showed historical analysis of 17 different galactic civilizations that had risen and fallen over the past 100,000 years. Each had made similar mistakes: overextension, cultural suppression, economic exploitation, and reliance on force rather than consent. Humanity learned from these failures, Hughes explained. We built our government to prevent the conditions that lead to imperial collapse. Power is distributed rather than centralized. Local autonomy is preserved rather than suppressed. Economic relationships are based on mutual benefit rather than exploitation. As the session concluded, the delegates realized they were witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. The species that had been dismissed as too primitive to matter had spent their century of silence not just building weapons, but building wisdom. They had emerged from hiding not as conquerors but as protectors and governors who understood how to create lasting peace. Chancellor Vex approached Hughes as the other delegates filed out of the chamber. President Hughes, I have one final question. Your species could have ruled this galaxy through fear and force. Instead, you chose to rule through consent and benefit. Why? Hughes smiled and looked out at the stars visible through the station's massive viewing ports. Chancellor, we learned something important during our years of watching and waiting. True strength is not the ability to destroy your enemies. True strength is the ability to turn your enemies into friends. The galaxy slept while we forged planet killers. But we also forged something more important: the wisdom to know that the greatest victory is the one that makes future wars unnecessary. The Commonwealth had begun not with conquest but with invitation, and the galaxy was finally ready to wake up to an age of peace that would last for thousands of years. Humanity had waited a century to reveal their secrets, and now those secrets were creating a future that no species had dared to dream possible.